So the second wird is between the sunrise and al-Duha, which begins when the sun has risen above the horizon, the height of a spear. And that continues until Salat al-Dhuhr. That is the Waqt al-Duha. Imam Ibn Qudama here, he says that this is approximately 3 hours of the daytime. Approximately 3 hours. So if we were to say that the day was 12 hours, then this would make up a quarter of the day. And this is a very precious time. And there are really two things that you should be occupying your time during this wird. Two things with which you should occupy your time. The first is Salat al-Duha. This was a practice of the Prophet ﷺ, and Salat al-Duha is offered at that time when the sun rises above the horizon, the height of a spear, until Salat al-Dhuhr, and it's offered as either 2, 4, 6, or 8 rakat. And this is something that can be done every other day, as was the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ. That's the first thing, Salat al-Duha. The second thing is what has to do with, your neighbors, friends, and people around you, like visiting the sick, dealing with the funeral prayers, following the funeral prayers, attending gatherings, helping people with their needs. And if you're not able to do any of this during that time, then you should busy yourself with recitation and dhikr, recitation of the Quran and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third wird, or section of your day, is going to be from al-Duha ila al-Zawal. Duha, of course, we said just before Dhuhr, and the Zawal is when the sun is at its height and then falls slightly, casting the first bit of shadow in the opposite direction. That's the Zawal. Zala means to fall. And so the Zawal of Shams is when the sun falls from its height, and it casts the first bit of shadow. So this time, he says here, al-Duha, so he's talking about not, as I mentioned, from the time of Dhuhr until the Zawal. He's talking about after 3 hours from sunrise, basically. He gives you a 3-hour window there. So from that 3-hour window, so let's say if the sun rises enough to pray at 6, then you go 7, 8, 9. So he's talking about 9 o'clock until Dhuhr, from 9 till Dhuhr. So this is like mid-morning until noon. He's saying in this particular window of time, there are 4 categories of things that a person can do. Number 1 is to go work, is to go earn your livelihood and to make a living, to go out into the marketplace if you're a businessman or a merchant. And when you are trading and you are dealing, then you do that with honesty and with trust. If you're someone that is in an industry or a trade, then you should also do that with pure intention and compassion for others. You should not forget the remembrance of Allah during these times, even though what you're doing may seem unrelated to the hereafter, because it is a part of this world. You can also be remembering Allah during your work. And you should find happiness and be satisfied with a little, meaning a little earning. You should try and find satisfaction in that. Number 2 is the qaylula. The qaylula is known as the mid-morning nap, if you will, qaylula. And the qaylula is actually one of the things that helps a person to pray in the night. They take a little rest in the mid-morning, and they're able to preserve some energy until the evening time. Just like the suhoor or sihri helps a person fast during the day. So if you do take a qaylula or a nap in the mid-morning, then you need to make sure that you wake up before the zawal with enough time to get ready for prayer, meaning to make wudu, etc., before the actual prayer time begins. He says, the night and the day combined, they make up 24 hours. And so, kind of being moderate, you should sleep a third of that, which is 8 hours of sleep, which is kind of what, modern medicine tells us today is a good number to shoot for, to get 8 hours of rest. 8 hours of rest in the 24-hour period, okay? Which means that sometimes you may not be able to get 8 hours at night, and so the qaylula is there for you to make up the deficiency. He says that if you sleep less than 8 hours, then you're not going to, you're basically susceptible to ailment and disease. The body just simply needs time to recuperate and rest. And so if you're constantly stressing the body without giving it its sleep that it needs, then it's weakening and susceptible to sickness and disease. If you sleep more than 8 hours, then what it does is it produces lethargy and laziness. And so if a person sleeps more than 8 hours in the night, then they have really no purpose or no need to be sleeping during the day, the qaylula. So if you get your 8 hours at night, you don't need to be making the qaylula, the nap, in the daytime. So basically wherever you've lacked or have a deficiency, you can make up, either in the mid-morning nap or you make up at night so that you can get your rest. The next wird here, this is the fourth one, he says, which is between az-zawal ila faragh min as-salat al-dhuhr. Basically, from the adhan of dhuhr until you finish praying dhuhr. And this is the shortest duration of time when it comes to these awrad here during the day. And this, believe it or not, is the most virtuous. From the time the sun casts its shadow, having fallen from its zenith, until Salatul Dhuhr. And this can be, depending on where you are, anywhere between a couple of minutes to 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever the policy is where you are. So you absolutely have to take advantage of this time. So what you should be doing here, that when the adhan is called, that you respond to the mu'adhin by repeating after them. And then after that is done, you pray 4 rak'ahs. 4 raka'at, and it's mentioned that there's a special reward for these 4 raka'at, which you should prolong, if you will, because during this time is when the doors of the heavens, they open. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, in Zad al-Ma'ad, he said that it's been said that these 4 raka'at associated with this opening of the heavens, if you will, is an independent prayer besides the sunan of dhuhr. He mentions elsewhere in the same book a narration from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, that he used to pray after the zawal 8 rak'ahs. He would pray 8. And he would say that the 8 raka'at that he prayed during that time are equivalent to standing in the night in prayer. And basically the secret of this, if you will, the secret to this time period is that it is in the middle of the day, which is inverse to the middle of the night. The middle of the day, its inverse is the middle of the night. And in the middle of the night, this is a very special time. The last third of the night in particular, when there is the divine descension of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so you have that moment and then this moment juxtaposed to it. And so it should be understood that these 2 times are very special times in which you can draw near to Allah Azza wa Jal. Of course, you should also pray the sunan prayers of dhuhr and before and after. So before Dhuhr, you have Ratiba, which is 2 rak'ahs before Dhuhr and 2 after. And then you have Sunan al-Dhuhr, which are extra voluntary prayers, 4 before and 4 after. So there are numerous prayers that certainly can be made associated with the middle of the day. The 5th wird here, he says, is what is after that time until Asr prayer. So basically after Dhuhr prayer until Asr prayer. And during this time, it's preferred that you busy yourself with dhikr, remembrance of Allah, and prayer, and the various other righteous deeds and acts. And the best of those actions is to wait from one prayer to the next. So if you can afford to, waiting from Salatul Dhuhr until Salatul Asr, and in the process of waiting, you are remembering Allah, making extra prayers, reading Quran, making dua, etc. The 6th section or wird here of the day is when the Asr prayer begins until the sun begins to set, if you will, or turn yellow in the sky. As you know, as the sun gets closer to the horizon, it casts this yellow glow across the horizon. He says, there's nothing to do during this time of prayer except for arba'u raka'atin bayn al-adhanayn. After the adhan of Asr and Asr prayer, you can also pray 4 raka'at here. And then after the prayer of Asr, there are 4 things a person should do which are related to Salat al-Fajr, which are making dua, dhikr, qira'ah, reciting the Quran, and reflection and pondering. He says the best action of these 4 during this time after Salat al-Asr is to recite the Quran while pondering, reflecting, and understanding the meanings. So here what you can do is you take the Mus'haf with you and then perhaps a companion book, tafsir, something very summarized, Tafsir al-Jalalain, for example, or something of that nature. It's very, very, very succinct. And you read the Quran and you can look at that to understand and reflect over the ayat that you're reading. The last, number 7, so this is the last stage of the day. So we can see there are 7 stages that Ibn Qudama has broken the day into. The 7th stage, he says, when the sun's yellowed in the horizon until the sun sets, al-Maghrib. He said this is a very, very precious time. Imam al-Hasan al-Basri, he said that this is, here you should have more reverence, if you will, for this time than the beginning of the day. And during this time, it's good to make a tasbih and also subhanallah, to glorify Allah subhanahu, and also to seek Allah's forgiveness at the end of the day. And then at Maghrib, the adhan of Maghrib, then this is the end of the awrad of the daytime. The stages of the day are now finished. And now you should think about and look at your condition and your state. Take yourself to account and think, have you increased or have you decreased? You should also remember that your life is very short. And as the days go by, because this is the end of a day, the beginning of the next day is Maghrib. Salat al-Maghrib is the beginning of the next day. So here you're at the end of your day, and you need to be taking yourself to account for the previous day. Have I done better or have I done worse? Imam al-Hasan al-Basri says, O son of Adam, you are nothing but a number of days. When one of those days goes, a part of you goes with it. And so you should think about today versus yesterday. Have you achieved righteousness in the daytime? And if you have, you should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for success. And if not, then you should repent. Seek Allah's forgiveness and resolve yourself to making up the difference, and also to essentially make up for any bad deeds that were done. And you can do so in the night, as the Prophet ﷺ said that good deeds, they remove bad deeds. And then you need to remember to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for health. If you are healthy, that you are still alive, you still have time to make up for any deficiencies in your worship and righteousness. And also he mentions that a number of the Salaf, the pious of the past, preferred that they did not conclude a day except that they did so by giving sadaqah. They give some form of sadaqah. And they should also seek with the utmost best of their ability to do whatever righteousness is possible. And that concludes the 7 stages of the day. The beautiful part about all of that is you can see the variety of things that can be done. And the point of this is so that the spirit, the human spirit, doesn't become bored with one particular act. If it was just prayer all day long and that's all we ever did, at some point we would become very weary with it. But because we can mix it up with recitation, with dhikr, with reflection and pondering, with helping people, with going to work and seeking our sustenance, etc., then it makes for a more dynamic life and removes some of the possibilities that you would become bored of remembering Allah and worshiping Him.